Another question I wanted to ask you about is obviously you're in a situation, and I think there might be quite a few ex-JWs who are in this difficult situation where they have shared custody with a former spouse who is maybe still a witness. Would you have any advice on how to deal with that? Or how have you been able to, obviously it's a difficult situation, but how have you been able to try and make that work?
It took a lot of trial and error because obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, my ex-wife is very much in. She's very much one of Jehovah's Witnesses, very zealous, for the religion. And so she teaches the kids that religion. But what I do, and you have to be careful, especially in my situation, because I don't want to bash their mother's beliefs to them. I just want to point out that mine are different and why. And I do that, and it's worked. They see the difference. They see that she drags them out in service. She drags them to meetings. They see that she's not as nice as they claim they are. She sees that we do things like, homeless outreach, and we are good to people, and we're still kind to people despite what they hear at the Watchtower about how everyone who's in the world is wicked. They see the difference. And, we celebrate Christmas. They're not the gifts part, but we have the tree last year, and they celebrate their birthdays, and we have little birthday parties for them. And they really like those things. Obviously, kids like to have fun, and they ask about it. And I explain to them in simple terms that they can understand why I think it's silly. We sat down the other day, we were having ice cream, and I forget how it came up, but the idea of things being pagan came up. One of my kids mentioned it. And I told them, well, you know that all the days of the week are named after gods from a long time ago. And my son loves the Marvel comic movies. So Thor is like his favorite character, Thor. So I knew he loved that movie. You know that Thursday comes from Thor's Day. It's actually in worship of the god Thor. Like, and he's like, oh, well, that's great. So he really liked that. And we were eating ice cream. Like, well, ice cream's not in the Bible. Does that mean we can't have anything to do with ice cream? And they laughed, and that's silly. And so approaching it from a simple way, not an attack, but just a reasonable think about this in whatever understanding they have at their age, it really works. And both of them have told me that they are not going to follow their mother's religion. And they're young. My daughter's about to turn 8 and my son is 10. So whatever they decide is perfectly okay with me as long as they've made a conscientious decision. But I can tell that they're going to be fine. It wasn't easy because, and I have to be careful about the way I word it, because legally I'm not supposed to say, I have to be careful about how I talk about it, and my kids being involved. But there was a lot of negative things that happened at first that I wanted to rail against. I wanted to tell my kids how terrible I thought it all was, and how damaging it is. And I wanted to do that, but you have to suppress that because you're dealing with children, and it's their mother. And it's better to slowly just show them why you believe what you believe, show them the kind of life you live, and let them begin to come to those conclusions on their own. Now, I'm fortunate that is what my father always did with me. He was always reasonable and logical. And even if I was too young to really understand what he was talking about, I have memories of him explaining things to me. So I'd never assume that they're going to do things that I tell them to do just because I said to do it. No, they need to hear the reason why. And I think that's helped. So they're on a good path now.
That's good. Because obviously I can understand the temptation for many ex-JWs in this situation is to be terrified that their children are going to become JWs and to overreact. And in their completely understandable desire to get their kids away from this religion, they actually push them further in. And I think what you said, that's brilliant advice, that basically kids are smart, kids pay attention, they notice things. And it's almost like if that you're just basically you're showing the difference. You're showing them the difference between what life is like as a Jehovah's Witness and what life is like when you're not a Jehovah's Witness. And I've heard this from other parents who are in similar situations, is they just kind of start to work it out. And I think the other thing I think is important, like you say, is you still show the JW side of things respect. You're not disrespectful. And kids work out that JWs are quite disrespectful to non-JWs, but non-JWs are respectful to JWs, and that they just start to work it all out and come to their own conclusions.
Yeah.
And I think one I think that's probably quite interesting to think about is also that, in a sense, if you're the non-JW parent, you literally are the only real adult in the room, because the kids are kids, and JW spouse in many ways doesn't have complete control of their own mind. In many ways, they're under the control of an organization. In some ways, they are quite childlike. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. I mean, they're not in control of their own free thinking and faculties.
Yeah, they have passed that over to another group of people. And that's true. You can't deny that.
And that's why it's so important for that non-JW parent to literally be the adult in the room, to act responsibly, to act rationally, calmly, and kindly, because the children really will pick up on that.
One last thing I would say about if you have kids and you share custody with someone who is a witness, the Watchtower life is very, very boring for children. So you are at a distinct advantage as the non-JW parent, that your life is just inherently going to be more fun for the kids. And those fond memories are going to feed their decision as they get older. So I really think we have a big advantage, because it would be different if witnesses celebrated all the holidays but had all these other destructive doctrines. No, but everything they do, it's very ascetic lifestyle. It's very austere. It's cold and boring for children most of the time. And that sets us at a distinct advantage in that regard.